All right, today we are diving into an absolute classic of political science, Robert Dahl's amazing 1989 book, Democracy and Its Critics. Seriously, this is a book that completely changed the game and how we think about and even measure one of the most important ideas in the world.
I mean, it sounds like a simple question, doesn't it? But really, think about it for a second. Is it just about having elections? Is it about certain freedoms? How can you actually tell if a country that calls itself a democracy really is one? This is the huge puzzle that Dahl set out to solve.
So let's look at a real-world example to see how tricky this gets. In the 2014 Egyptian election, one candidate, Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, won with a whopping 93% of the vote. Now, on paper, a massive victory like that seems pretty democratic, right? But then you learn that his main opponents were basically kicked out of the race before the election even happened. Suddenly, it's a lot more complicated. This is exactly the kind of situation that shows us we need a much better way to measure what democracy actually is.
And this gets us right to the heart of the dilemma. The word democracy is incredibly popular. I mean, who doesn't want to be a democracy? But as Dahl pointed out, it's become, and I'm quoting him here, not so much a term of restricted and specific meaning as a vague endorsement of a popular idea. And that vagueness, it's dangerous, because it lets all kinds of systems hide behind a word that everyone loves.
So who was this thinker who gave us the tools to cut through all this confusion? Let's get to know the man himself, Robert Dahl.
Robert Dahl was a total giant in his field. He spent his whole career at Yale and helped turn its political science department into one of the best in the world. But here's what's so cool. His passion for this stuff didn't start in some stuffy library. It started on the docks in Alaska, where he worked as a longshoreman. He said that working with, in his words, plain, ordinary human beings gave him this deep respect that really fueled his entire life's work to figure out how democracy actually works for real people.
And this quote just nails his motivation. Dahl basically looked back at over 2,000 years of thinking about democracy all the way back to the ancient Greeks, and he felt that the theories just weren't cutting it anymore. They were these perfect ideals that just didn't fit the messy reality of the modern world. He knew we needed a whole new framework.
And that leads us to the absolute core of Dahl's big idea, the crucial difference between the perfect idea of democracy and the real-world systems we actually live in. He realized we needed two separate concepts to understand what we're aiming for versus what we actually have.
First up, he defined what a perfect, ideal democracy would even look like. You should think of this like a perfect circle in geometry. It's a pure concept. It doesn't really exist in the messy real world, but it's an absolutely essential benchmark you can use to measure things against. And for Dahl, this perfect ideal has 5 incredibly high standards. Let's just quickly run through them. First, effective participation, which means everyone has an equal chance to get their views on the table. Second, voting equality, where every single vote counts for exactly the same. Third, enlightened understanding, so people have a real chance to figure out what's best. Fourth, control of the agenda, meaning the people decide what issues get debated, not just the elites. And finally, inclusiveness, where basically all adults are part of the process. It's a crazy high bar, right? Let's be real. No country on Earth has ever fully met this perfect standard.
Okay, so if no country is a perfect democracy, then what do we call the systems we actually see in the world? Dahl knew we needed a new word for that. And this is where he gives us his most famous concept, polyarchy.
Polyarchy. It sounds a little academic, but it literally just means rule of the many. This was Dahl's term for all the imperfect, messy, but real-world political systems we see in countries like, say, the United States or Germany or Japan. They aren't perfect democracies, not by a long shot, but they have certain key institutions that make them democratic. Polyarchy is something we can actually see and measure in the real world.
And this chart really shows the key difference. Ideal democracy is the North Star. It's the goal you're always aiming for. Polyarchy is your GPS coordinate. It tells you exactly where you are in the map right now. It's not based on 5 abstract ideals for citizens. It's based on 7 concrete institutional guarantees a government must provide. And here they are, those 7 guarantees. To be a polyarchy, a country needs elected officials to be the ones in control, not, say, the military. It needs free and fair elections, and pretty much everyone has to have the right to vote. People also need the right to run for office themselves. And then, crucially, you need freedom of speech. You need access to information that isn't just state propaganda. And you need the freedom for people to get together and form their own groups, like political parties or advocacy organizations.
So why has this one book had such an incredible impact? Why are we still talking about these ideas all these decades later?
Well, this number kind of says it all. Over 7,000. According to Google Scholar, that's how many times other academic works have cited democracy in its critics. That's not just influential, that's a massive footprint. It shows you that Dahl didn't just write a book, he basically created the language and the toolkit for an entire field of study. And his work wasn't just for academics either. As this review points out, the book is valuable for everybody. Its clarity gives experts and just regular, curious citizens powerful insights. It's a toolkit for anyone who wants to think more clearly about how their own government works.
But Dahl wasn't happy to just describe the world as he saw it. He was always looking ahead, always thinking, how can we do better? How can we push our real-world polyarchies to get just a little bit closer to that democratic ideal? His work is just filled with these innovative and sometimes pretty radical ideas for what could come next.
Let me tell you about two of his most exciting ideas. First, the mini-populace. Imagine this, a group of 1,000 citizens, chosen completely at random, like for jury duty, who spend a whole year diving deep into one single tough issue, like climate change or healthcare. And then they advise the actual lawmakers. It's a way to get past all the political noise. Then there's his idea for workplace democracy. He basically asked, why do we demand democratic principles for our country, but then accept top-down, authoritarian rule from 9 to 5 in our jobs? In an age of huge corporate power, both of these ideas feel more relevant now than ever before.
So we end with this. Robert Dahl didn't give us a final, simple answer on what democracy is. Instead, he gave us something way more valuable. He gave us a ruler. He gave us those 7 standards of polyarchy, a clear, practical tool we can use to measure our own political systems. So the real question is, if you take that ruler and you hold it up to your own country, how does it stack up? What are its strengths, and where does it fall short? That's the challenge and the tool that Dahl leaves for all of us.